Wake up! It's the Sleep Unplugged podcast, episode 198, The Loneliness Epidemic and Insomnia, out by myself. Welcome, everyone, to the Sleep Unplugged podcast. My name is Chris Winter. I'm a neurologist, sleep specialist, and your host for this episode of the podcast. If you're new to the Sleep Unplugged podcast family, welcome. If you're a veteran, welcome back. We are so glad you're here. Happy Easter to everyone who celebrates Easter. It was a beautiful Sunday down here in Florida. Went out and had a little breakfast on the beach, and it was delightful. I hope everybody else is having a good time too, emerging from the winter. You know, it's funny having the last name Winter because 75% of the time when you place your coffee order and somebody says, I need a name for this order, and you say winter, there's usually a comment like, oh, that's interesting, or that's so cool. Let me tell you something. By the end of the winter, nobody is saying that, and everybody's giving you dirty looks. So it's nice that the weather, hopefully where you're at, is getting a little bit fairer. Want to give a big shout out, as you can see here to my right, we have the Side Sleeper Z cup. And if you look down here at the bottom, you can see that Pluto pillow has been added to the cup. This cup is theirs for 1 year until we repeat it all again in 2027. Congrats again to Pluto. Not going to do comments, corrections, criticisms, but we will do our quick April Fool's Day tradition where I read out some of the best mean or negative emails, comments to the podcast. I'm going to cut it down to 5 to keep things rolling along. But in fairness, in the past year, there weren't a lot of really mean or nasty. I think people have given up sending those emails. It's always positive things or thank you so much, and we try to highlight those as much as we can. But once a year, we'll highlight our top 5 mean communications. Number 1 from Carla, who wrote about our episode 177 on sleep fragmentation. Oh my goodness. I just wanted to hear the topic, not more than 5 minutes of housekeeping. And we have a sort of a running joke on this podcast that Karen sent in a very upset email because of that situation. And every now and then we have somebody like Carla who agrees with her. And Drew, who wrote, does he ever get to the topic? Because I gave up. Jordic wrote simply one word, nerd. Eric wrote about the Sleep Unplugged Pillow Fight Tournament trophy that you see me holding here, although I guess you could argue that it's not real. It's just AI that I'm making look like I'm holding a real trophy. Eric wrote, I don't think this is a real award. And for Eric, I'm going to post on my social media this week some more trivia about the origins and history of the Side Sleeper Z Cup. We posted that a year ago, and that was really popular. I've had several people say, please post some more lore about the cup. Of course, it's all made up. Or is it? I don't know. Eric doesn't think it's a real award. So, Eric, I'm going to post some more trivia about the Side Sleeper Z Cup just for you. And finally, somebody who wrote casual wrote about the entire pillow fight competition. These pillows suck. Thank you so much, Casual, for taking the time to key that in. So helpful, so appreciated. We appreciate any communication to the Sleep Unplugged podcast. We consider you all, whether you want to be or not, part of the family. This is a special episode of the podcast. Of course, it's the first episode of April, which means we're talking about insomnia. But if you listen to the podcast, you know that the sleep company Sleep Reset has graciously agreed to sponsor our Insomnia Monday content for the next year. So I am excited to welcome everybody to the Sleep Reset Monday, sponsored by Sleep Reset. Sleep Reset is a virtual sleep clinic built to help you identify what's wrong with your sleep, whether it's sleep apnea or insomnia or both. And we're going to do a podcast about how sleep apnea can be mistaken for insomnia at some point in the future. The insomnia therapy is built around cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, which we talk about a lot on this show, and we will talk about today for sure. CBTI is considered the gold standard treatment for chronic insomnia. And unlike quick fixes, CBTI actually targets the root cause of insomnia, things like conditioned arousal, sleep effort, the habits that keep your brain on at night. And man, we are going to talk about that a lot. So don't just track your sleep, do something meaningful to fix it. Don't just buy an MRI and take a picture of your organs. Find real experts that can interpret that data and help you find real solutions. What I like about Sleep Reset is that it brings this treatment into your home on a very structured, personalized, and accessible way. You're not just getting an app, you're getting a real sleep coach guiding you step by step through the process. And importantly, it isn't just about sleep at night. As we've discussed on this podcast on many occasions, insomnia affects how you feel, how you function, how you move through your 24-hour day. And when sleep improves, people often notice they're more present, they're more engaged, they're better able to connect with the world around them. And that is exactly what we're talking about on the podcast today. Sleep Reset is covered by many insurance plans. You can also use HSA or FSA funds. Many users report meaningful improvements in just a few weeks. And believe me, they have thousands of users, and their app is the number one sleep rated app on the App Store. So if you're ready to address your sleep with the highest rated CBTI program in the App Store, with a plan that's trusted by many, many, many people, that's actually backed by science, you can learn more by going to sleepreset.com, or you can write this down for a free 7-day trial just for our users. The Sleep Reset, TheSleepReset, all run together.com/podcast. Start your first week of real clinician designed insomnia treatment tonight and start feeling rested without sleeping pills today. So, really excited to have them aboard. Really, really gracious for them to do it. So, check them out. Our title of our podcast, The Loneliness Epidemic and Insomnia Out by Myself. Out by Myself is a line from the song Valerie, which most people know as an Amy Winehouse song. It was actually recorded by an English group called the Zootons. They were founded in 2001 in Liverpool. Big fan of them, big fan of this version of Valerie. If you're only familiar with Amy Winehouse's version, which is awesome, I think she did that because of Chris, oh, what's that guy that Mark Ronson heard the song and thought Amy would be great covering it. But you got to check out the song itself. Wonderful musicianship. I've always had a secret crush on Abby Harding, their saxophone player. If you check out on YouTube, I think it was from either 2006 or 2008, they were on Jules Harding performing Valerie. And it's not a lot of people that can look that cool playing sax the way she does on that song. Great group. This was off their second album called Tired of Hanging Around. I think it was released. God, I don't remember when it was released. Probably about 2006. I think it was released in 2006. Produced by Stephen Street, who, if you're a Morrissey and Smiths aficionado, you know that Stephen Smith did a lot with the Smiths. He actually helped write songs like Interesting Drug, Every Day Like Sunday, Suede Head, Last the Famous, International Playboys, Hairdresser on Fire, Disappointed. So we're going to put both the Amy Winehouse and the Zatons on the Spotify Music Playlist Volume 4. Check them out. Here we go. So in 2023, I was invited to present at the Aspen Ideas Conference, which was a real honor and a lot of fun being around so many smart, interesting people. Let me tell you something. That was a tour de force of imposter syndrome. I remember my book was on sale in their big, commerce tent right next to Liza Schlesinger, that comedian. She was speaking out there as well too. It was just kind of bizarre to see that. Like, you're a real famous person and I am not. So we're going to talk about loneliness today, and I bring this up because I gave a lecture that immediately followed the Surgeon General Vivek Murthy gave a talk, and my talk was right after that. And let me tell you something. When you're going to give a talk, you never want to follow the sitting Surgeon General of the United States. Although it actually worked out really well because he brought a ton of people in. And then they were like, okay, our next talk is about sleep. And nobody really cares who's talking. If you mention the S word, probably only second to sex, you get a whole lot of people sticking around because everybody likes to talk about sleep. So anyway, we talk a lot about insomnia. Of course, this is Insomnia Monday. It's Sleep Reset Monday. And we think about insomnia as being a nighttime disorder. It's a problem of sleep opportunity, circadian timing, conditioned arousal. But what if we think about a large subset of patients having insomnia really being a state or a disorder of disconnection? So in 2023, Vivek Murthy released an advisory framing loneliness and social isolation as a major public health crisis, placing it up there with smoking and obesity, physical inactivity. I think gun violence was a big topic of concern of his, and looking at these things as big and modifiable health risks. And I think we all feel it. We've all lived through pre-pandemic, pandemic, and post-pandemic. And I'm going to tell you, I think there have been things that have been lost. Not only in terms of social connection, but the rise of political divide and people. I don't even want to interact with those people because they've got a certain flag in their front yard or whatever. I think that this is something that's on the rise, and there's a growing body of sleep research that's quietly been building a parallel story along with what Dr. Murthy talks about, that loneliness and insomnia are deeply entwined, not just associated. We talk a lot about associations, Tylenol, autism. We talked about gabapentin and dementia. But this is actually reinforcing each other in that sort of bi-directional loop. The insomnia reinforces the loneliness exacerbates the insomnia, and you've got an engine at this point, which is not the engine you want driving in your car. So the question becomes, are we missing something fundamentally in terms of how we treat insomnia? I think the answer to that question is yes. The patient arrives in a clinic. I can't sleep. I struggle with my sleep. My guess is 99 times out of 100, a pill is given. One time out of 100, a provider is asking, tell me about your social connections and the network that supports you in your life. My guess that's not a question that's asked a lot in the situation of insomnia. So, in this episode, we're going to talk about how loneliness is defined, why it matters medically, explore biological and psychological mechanisms that link isolation to insomnia, because that's why we're here. Look at some evidence that says insomnia itself actually increases loneliness and vice versa, and sort of distinguish between the social isolation, loneliness, and relationship quality, because that quality really does matter. And I think that's what we have today, right? Maybe more interactions with people in various virtual ways, but I think the quality of those interactions is extremely poor. And then basically at the end, what do we do about it? How can we fix this problem? So let's talk about the Surgeon General's warning. His reference was it was called Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation. This was the name of the manuscript that he put out. The full title of it, where is it? I've got notes literally everywhere. That is not the full title of the manuscript. Sorry, I've closed I've closed my notes where I had that open. Anyway, so Our Epidemic of Loneliness and Isolation is published in 2023. The core points of this manuscript were that loneliness is not the same thing as being alone. He defines loneliness as a subjective gap between desired and actual connection. So if you desire to be in a cabin in the woods by yourself, that individual is not necessarily lonely. That would be defined as what we would call social isolation. So there is a difference between social isolation, which is an objective lack of contact, and loneliness. And both loneliness and social isolation are independently linked to a higher mortality risk. It's been compared to smoking about 15 cigarettes a day. I think that's about a pack, maybe a little bit less. Isn't it? Is a pack 20 cigarettes a day? I have no idea. I should know that. That you ask that question of every patient your entire career, and if somebody said, "Quick, tell me how many cigarettes are in a pack," I don't really know. It's an independent risk factor for cardiovascular disease, stroke, dementia, depression, and anxiety for sure. So loneliness is not just a feeling problem, it's a health problem. And that was what the Surgeon General was trying to say, that we don't think of smoking or obesity as just sort of a feeling problem. It's a real objective health metric that we can look at, modify, and maybe help a population live better or live longer. And loneliness is in there as well, too. So his framing was we need to look at the relationships in people's lives as a form of preventative medicine, and that structural, behavioral, institutional, small scale, large scale solutions are required, not just an individual's willpower to not want that. And I think there's an interesting parallel there between the way we think about loneliness and the way we think about something like weight, that we've moved away from, well, they just need to exercise more and eat better, the blaming, the willpower that, well, they just need to get out and make more friends. It might go far beyond something that is volitional at that point. So, why does loneliness disrupt sleep? There's several key studies here we can talk about. Loneliness is associated with sleep fragmentation in a communal society. This was a 2011 paper in Sleep. This was, I think it was Hockley was the artist. Been around too many museums lately. Was the author of that paper. There's a broader Annals of Behavioral Medicine paper, Loneliness Matters, a theoretical and empirical review of consequences and mechanisms. That was from 2010. Maybe that was the Hockley paper. The Griffin study of 2020 was a systematic review called Loneliness and Sleep. Systematic review and meta-analysis. This was in Health Psychology Open. And then the final paper that I wanted to review with you was from 2023 by the author Yu, The Association Between Loneliness and Sleep Quality Among Older Adults, a systematic review and meta-analysis. This was from the journal Geriatric Nursing. So when you look at these papers, you start to see several mechanisms that are proposed as for the reasons why this relationship exists at all. The first one is hypervigilance and threat monitoring. And I think about this one, if you've seen, I don't want to give away Project Hail Mary, but if you've read the book or listened to the audiobook, which is awesome, seen the movie, there's a very sweet situation where the alien does not, their culture doesn't believe in sleeping by yourself because when they sleep, they are unable to awaken like we are. It's funny that we think about awakening during sleep as a negative. I see patients every week. You're like, I'm coming to see you. Why? Well, I wake up in the middle of the night. I can't get back to sleep sometimes. It's really good that you can wake up if you smell smoke or there's a threat there. In that movie, these creatures, once they sort of power down, are unable to wake up. So if there's a problem, they will die. So their society has evolved in terms of sleeping or whatever they call it, where another alien watches them sleep in case there's a problem. So in the movie, when the little alien Rocky sleeps, Ryan Gosling's character Grace, Dr. Grace, has to watch him, and vice versa. It's really sweet. So there's a reason for hypervigilance, threat monitoring being a problem with sleep. And when we're isolated, we naturally feel more vulnerable. So our brain shifts more towards vigilance mode and protection mode versus security mode. Let's get some better sleep mode. And that Increased sympathetic activation and increased cortisol carries with its own sleep and health-related problems. Rumination and cognitive arousal. When you're lonely, there's more increased internal dialogue, more anxiety, more depression, more cognitive fuel for that insomnia fire. Emotional dysregulation. We know that loneliness tends to reduce buffering. That social support kind of buffers us and protects us from a lot of things out there. So again, more anxiety, more depressive cognition. Uh, Reduce circadian anchors. You're lonely, you're not interacting, going out and playing pickleball with your friends, or going to a movie, going out to eat, hanging out at people's houses to watch the Final Four, et cetera, et cetera. So without those social rhythms, those zeitgebers and cues that we talk about, meals and conversations and events and routines, we weaken our own circadian rhythm that provides vigilance during the day and sleep at night. So that circadian drift, like we talk about a lot with retired people, I don't have to get up to go to work anymore. I don't have to get the kids on the bus. I can get up whenever I want. I can go to bed whenever I want. Becomes a bit of an issue. And finally, relationship quality, not just the number of contacts, but the relationship quality that we have really matters. And so poor quality relationships can not only support good sleep, they can actually worsen sleep, sometimes more than just isolation alone. So loneliness doesn't just quiet the brain at night. It really amplifies a lot of the negative things that are going on with the brain. Busy, connected can be very good. So, does insomnia cause loneliness? We've talked about loneliness causing insomnia. I think the answer is pretty clear that it does. Does insomnia, struggling with your sleep, reinforce or cause loneliness? And there's a bunch of studies that say, yeah, it probably does. First one, Ben Simon and Walker from 2018, sleep loss causes social withdrawal and loneliness. This is from Nature Communications. Sleep deprivation created increased social distancing, a reduced desire for interaction, loneliness, etc. So as people struggle with their sleep, they start to become less engaged with others and reinforce that loneliness. The other paper was a 2024 study, paper by Gordon called Day-to-Day Variability in Sleep Predicts Next Day Loneliness Longitudinal Study. This was from 2024 Journal of Affective Disorders. So what we find in terms of those reverse mechanisms are sleep deprivation reduces social motivation. You're sleep deprived, you're not sleeping well. And again, let's differentiate sleep deprivation from insomnia. But for the purpose here, we're saying you're not sleeping well, you don't like the way you sleep. This leads to you feeling a certain way the next day. And now, when people are like, hey, let's go out and do that fun thing, go hang out on the beach and have breakfast on Easter, you're more likely to be like, I don't really want to do that. And as that compounds and you're turning down invitations all the time, you start to create more interpersonal distance. You also become somebody who's less desirable socially. People keep asking you to do stuff. You always have an excuse for not wanting to do it. So people stop asking, right? So emotional blunting and irritability. So if you do drag yourself out of bed and go to the event, it, the sleep difficulties make it harder for you to engage meaningfully, and the social interactions feel more like an effort. And I think we've all been there. We're like, oh, I'm so tired. I don't want to go to my partner's gathering where there's a bunch of people that I'm not going to know. And it's just going to be a lot of effort for me to mingle with these individuals. So I think that can be kind of, and then if your mood is bad anyway, and you're irritable about the whole situation, you're irritable about your poor sleep, irritable having to get up and get dressed and go out because you just wanted to hang out on the couch with your dogs. You're going to be sending out those signals that again reinforce that, oh God, Ames brought her husband Chris. That guy was a pill. Like, he was really hard to get along with and irritable and clearly didn't want to be there. And you're probably not going to get that invitation in the future. Next day, loneliness effect, poor sleep increases that subjective loneliness, even when your social contacts are unchanged. I also think there's a sense of maybe not necessarily guilt, but frustration that you get offered to do something, you're too tired to do it, and then it happens. And there's a sense of, oh, why didn't I go? That sounds like people had so much fun. They were posting about it online. I wish I had done that. And now you're kind of frustrated with yourself that in the moment you didn't pull it together and get out there and do it. And the last one I think came from the Gordon paper was this idea of social contagion, which I think is awesome, which is essentially the sleep deprived individual transmit social withdrawal signals. So it's almost like you've got infected with the virus and you're putting out there a signal that you want to withdraw socially that some people think can be kind of contagious. It's like a depression in a dorm room or, can be kind of contagious. These kinds of things can spread and some people think that. So insomnia doesn't just keep you awake. It's keeping you awake within a world, your own world, that's slowly shrinking. So every morning you awaken to a world that just got a little bit smaller because of that insomnia and that social isolation. So again, loneliness increases that hyperarousal, which increases our insomnia. Our insomnia is absolutely associated with fatigue, withdrawal, irritability, not reading social cues, lack of motivation, etc. And this reinforces loneliness. So you can see how you could make a nice big circle where these things just start spinning faster and faster around. So again, we need to think about these things not necessarily as comorbidities, but almost as mutual maintenance factors. And for some patients, insomnia is not just maintained by thoughts about sleep, it's maintained by the absence of meaningful connection in their life. And this is where CBTI or working with a professional really starts to uncover the reasons for somebody's insomnia. Chris, hi, I'm Chris. How can I help you today? I'm here because I can't sleep. Okay, that's not why you're here. You're not here because you can't sleep. You may not like the way you sleep. You're not satisfied with it. It takes you too long to fall asleep. You wake up in the middle of the night, you have trouble getting back to sleep. Like, let's get into not only what your definitions of sleep are. That's a great place to start. I think it's okay if it takes you an hour to fall asleep. I think it's okay if you wake up to pee and it takes you a while to get back to sleep. But let's get really into what's really going on here? What's maintaining this thing? Why are you describing the fact that it takes you an hour to fall asleep as a living nightmare, hell on earth? I need to understand that. And when you start diving in and peeling back the layers, you start to understand that this individual, it is a hell on earth for them because when they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, can't get back to sleep, what do they think about? They think about going to work where they've worked for 2 years. Virtually nobody says hi to them. They don't feel like they're part of the team. They can't integrate with that group. They know that things are happening outside of work with a certain group of those people that they can't seem to break it. And it just kind of reinforces. Now they're not sleeping well. They're probably coming to work. They look tired. They're not participating. They're irritable. And you can see how these things can start to be a problem. So it's not a pill. It's not a sleep tracker you hook to your wrist. It's something that has to be a lot more meaningful. And that brings us to the interventions. What interventions really work? Well, it's important to understand it's not just, well, go out and be more social. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But again, I want to hesitate to put the blame on the patient, right? This is not a time to blame. It's a time for looking for solutions. And so I think the foundation for anything is cognitive behavioral therapy. Why was I so excited that Sleep Reset wanted to sponsor this podcast? Because I believe in what they do. I fundamentally believe in what they do and what they're trying to accomplish. It is the gold standard for insomnia. It's going to target what creates that arousal for you at night that's unhealthy and creating problems with your sleep. It's going to address this effort that you put into sleep that doesn't seem to be paying off in your mind. It addresses the dysfunctional beliefs, not only about sleep and insomnia, but maybe dysfunctional beliefs about why social isolation and loneliness has crept into your world over the last 6 months, over the last 2 years, ever since your kids left, ever since the death of your spouse. There's a lot to unpack with every patient that comes. They bring something to the table. And even though 10 different people might tell you, I can't fall asleep without sleeping pills, I can promise you that the underlying drivers of that sentence are probably quite different for all 10 of those people. That phrase, I can't sleep, is really just a door for us to walk through together as an initial step to figuring out what's going on. Behavioral activation. This is an interesting something I was not really that aware of. There are a lot of key studies looking at active interventions. My daughter Maeve, who's the producer of this podcast, does a lot of research on interventions between young parents and their young children, that maternal child, interactions and what facilitates healthy bonding. I think they're very similar kinds of research. And this was from Choi. This was a JAMA Open Network study, 2026. The full name of the study was Layperson Delivered Telephone-Based Behavioral Activation Among Low-Income Older Adults During the COVID-19 Pandemic, the HEAL-HOA Randomized Clinical Trial. Basically, the findings were that telephone-based behavioral activation plus mindfulness delivered by counselors, where have you heard that before? Sleep reset, reduce loneliness, improve sleep quality, and improve psychological well-being. That re-engagement with meaningful activity and meaningful communication. It wasn't just more contact, it was purposeful contact. It was high quality connection with people that really made a difference. We can do social prescribing and structured connection. Group-based interventions outperform passive contract. I'm a big fan of senior centers. There's a great one in Charlottesville. If you want to get involved, if you live anywhere near Charlottesville, Virginia, there's a great senior center there that you can get involved in that really puts that structured connection at the forefront of what they do. And I'm sure there are tons of other places like that all over the place that do the same thing. Even a family member who had dementia, who was at this sort of town center place where they had this whole place situated to look like something right out of a 1950s scene. They had a diner and old automobiles inside the place. So when you went there, there was all these social connections and things that kind of created memories. It was laid out in a very interesting way, and that social prescribing really helped with engagement and the cognitive health of these people. And I'm sure the sleep and that engagement was very positive as well too. Cognitive approaches, and this is where CBT would really fall into that, not necessarily CBTI, but a cognitive behavioral therapy approach to I don't like to interact with people because I always feel like I'm a burden. Why do you feel like you're a burden? You're not a burden. Let's talk about why you have this belief and why it's maladaptive. Well, I don't like to get out with other people because people don't really like me, or I'm not really that funny, or I have nothing really to say. Every maladaptive behavior we have has underlying reasons for it. And a lot of times when you start to selectively challenge those things in a non-judgmental, rational way, they start to kind of fall away and you start to understand that things you believed aren't really necessarily true. It's very similar to the CBTI work that we do. Mindfulness-based approaches reduce rumination, emotional reactivity, improve both sleep and perceived connection. And finally, low-tech interventions, phone calls, regular structured interactions with individuals, a consistent daily schedule where you're like, look, you don't have to be involved with all these things every day, but every morning you're going to start off with a gym class or a yoga class or an archery class or the millions and millions of classes that are out there that put you in communication with other people in a social way, even if it's just hello as you're getting your yoga mat set up and goodbye as you're rolling it up and putting your blocks away. Those connections really, really matter. And that consistency might just be more important than intensity. So, clinical takeaways. Let's be careful and look out for our older adults living by themselves, the recently bereaved, retired individuals, caregivers, remote workers, patients who already come to us with significant depression and anxiety, and frequent travelers. People who travel for a living can be very difficult to create that connection when you're always on the road. I always think about residents because people be like, "Hey, Chris, you want to come over and do this thing?" And I'm like, I have no idea 2 weeks from now if I'll be on call or not. So that always felt very social isolating. And your partner kind of gets dragged along with you too sometimes. So you always want to be thinking about the partner of the person in that situation. So what can we do differently as sleep providers? We ask about snoring. We ask about excessive sleepiness during the day, but we also ask about, do you feel socially connected in your world? Do your days have structure? And who do you interact with regularly on sort of a day-to-day or week-to-week basis? I think that's really important. So for too long, insomnia has been framed as this disorder of the night. Let's get rid of that. Let's move away from that and think about loneliness, reminding us that what happens during the day in our relationships, in our schedules and routines, that sense of connection may be just as important. And for some patients, the path to better sleep doesn't begin with the pillow that is and those pillows, despite what our friend said at the beginning, Eric, or no, a casual, that the pillows suck. No, these pillows are, every one of them is an award-winning pillow. Finding the right pillow can be great, but it might be a little bit more than just finding the right pillow. It begins with people. That's what it's all about. So, thanks again to Sleep Reset for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. I hope it was helpful in terms of your own journey with insomnia. Get in touch with the podcast, Dr. Chris Winter Instagram, Dr. Chris Winter Twitter, Blue Sky Threads. We have a YouTube page. We have uh, a web page for the podcast where we put the winners of the sleep awards. We have all of our top 10 sleep threats, including the amazing one from Beth last week. Big thanks to all of you. Communicate with the podcast. Let us know what you want to hear about. And until next week, sleep well.